We all know how difficult it can be with the psychological side of this sport. It's not just about physical, it's not just about how strong you are, it's not just about how technically competent you are. This is very much as well about what goes on in the mind. Having that self-belief, that confidence, almost that arrogance around the bar to say, I'm in control, I can lift this, is huge. And for some people, it forms very much a mental barrier. Now, I just want to share with you my experiences and how I, as an athlete, would deal with attempting new weights, how I would try to overcome that fear of getting underneath the bar. And don't get me wrong, I've had challenges psychologically as well, as I'm sure pretty much every lifter has. Any weightlifter who has not experienced the psychological challenge, that frustration of not having the confidence to get under a bar, is probably lying. I'd say I don't know a lifter who hasn't had this challenge at some point. So firstly, understand that that's normal. That is absolutely okay to experience those frustrations, but it's not okay to keep letting those frustrations and those mental blocks stop you progressing. It's finding a way to overcome that, which is really, really important. Now, how did I do that? It took time. It took time to practice and develop because, like with anything, the psychology side of it is a skill. And the more you practice, the better you're going to get. Don't expect these things to just suddenly click and for everything to be fine. It takes time. But it's important to break a habit. It's important to break a routine. So, for example, you're warming up. You get to a certain weight, whatever that weight is for you, and you start having that psychological block. You start doubting yourself. You go on the bar and you think, am I going to do it? And then you end up deadlifting it, or you high pull it, or you just chicken out of it. What we want to do is try and avoid that situation. So I would try to encourage ways of distracting you psychologically. Have a chat with someone as you're training. Yeah, don't look at that as a distraction. Look at it as a psychological coping mechanism where you chat with somebody and you almost forget what's on the bar and you just go through the process. You could do it where you train with somebody that you trust and you say to them, right, I'm having this block at this weight, just mess around with my weights, start putting them up, start putting them down. And you as a lifter don't look to see what weight's on the bar. No sneaky peeks. Position your chair maybe behind the bar so that you can't see what's on the end. Do a set. Come back, sit down on your chair, close your eyes, and your partner then will load the bar. Open your eyes, go, do the set, but don't take your time to look and see what's on the bar. And what I want you to do in that situation is feel the weight as it comes off the floor. Feel how much effort you need to put in. And as you come off the floor, if it feels light, don't go crazy, don't put too much effort in. If it feels heavy, put more in. If it feels really heavy, then you've really got to commit. But try and feel the movement rather than worrying about the numbers and what weights are on the bar. You might want to try using different weights. You know what it's like when you're used to loading the same weights on the bar, you visually see what's there and then you have that panic. Change them, mess them around. Instead of using 20s, 25s, use a load of 10s. Put a different weight, maybe a lighter weight on the inside and a heavier weight on the outside. Just start messing around so that it's different to what you're used to. Now, let's talk about what happens when it gets really heavy. You get to that point where you desperately want to push and you're physically strong enough, you're technically capable, but psychologically your head is saying no. Sit yourself down and ask yourself a couple of questions. Question number one is, what's the worst that's going to happen if you commit to that weight and you attempt it? And normally the worst that's going to happen is you drop it, you miss it. You might panic about getting hurt, about getting injured. Now, if you imagine a gymnast attempting a vault, they run down the runway, they take off on the springboard, and they commit to doing flips and somersaults and twists. And if that gymnast doesn't believe they can do it and they pull out halfway through, the chances are they're going to land badly. And that's the same with lifting. If you pull out halfway through a movement, that's when you risk hurting yourself. So if you trust the technique and believe in the movements that you're doing, then you should have no issues. So you ask yourself that question, what's the worst that's going to happen? And if it's just a case of, I'm going to miss the lift, can you live with that? Can you deal with that? Of course you can. It's not a big deal if you miss a lift. So what's stopping you? I suggest get on the bar and give it a go. If the worst that's going to happen is you miss it, you've got nothing to lose. Just relax, be confident. And I say, just relax, just be confident. I know that's easier said than done. But whatever happens, when you get to that weight, if you have that mental doubt before you get on the bar, don't attempt it. Just leave it, walk away, come back the next day. Let's try building that confidence on the slightly lighter weights. Let's do maybe several heavier singles before you go for that one that's going to stretch you that little bit further. But don't be afraid, okay? If, however, something is going wrong technically, then that's going to risk injury or that's going to cause you problems. That's a different ballgame. If you think you're struggling from a technical point of view, then get in touch. Maybe even check out the link that is on my Instagram bio or a link that's in this text if you're watching on Facebook, to my early bird waiting list. There's a technical course that could be really, really interesting and useful for you. Get the technique right. The psychology side of things is a lot more straightforward.